What's going on, everyone? I am just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about Europe's perspective on the current military conflict happening right now between us, the United States, and Iran. Now, to be clear, this is not a war. Don't call it a war, because our government says that technically this isn't a war, but although I'm not exactly sure what else you're supposed to call it when you bomb the hell out of somebody and kill their leader. But anyway, today I want to take a look at this video by TLDR News called Why War in Iran is Terrible News for Europe. And so already, based on that title alone, I can kind of assume that a lot of Europeans out there may not approve of what the United States is doing right now, or perhaps you don't approve with exactly how we're going about it. But honestly, the European perspective is not really something that we hear about here in the United States. So today, that is what I want to learn about. What Europe and Europeans think about this whole situation. So let's take a look.
The US and Israeli attack on Iran has sparked a war that's already spilled out across the Middle East. For European countries who were not involved in the initial attack, this is not some distant conflict, rather another war that has erupted on Europe's doorstep.
Yeah, I mean, oh my God. That is such an important, very significant thing to point out. And exactly what I mean is here in the United States, so many things. This is the perfect example. This conflict, this war, this feels so far away for us, for Americans. So, you know, that doesn't mean we can't have thoughts or feelings or opinions about it, but compare that to Europeans, to you guys, like who are this is literally on your doorstep. I mean, from what I understand, with all the missile strikes going on right now, like there are US bases located in European countries that have been hit. Like the United States has basically decided on our own to drag Europe into this, just by starting this whole thing. And that's extremely significant. And I'm sure Europeans have a lot of thoughts and feelings about that. And like I said, it's just such a different mindset because for you guys, like the threat of injury or death or war is so visceral and real, and it's right there and you can see it. And here in the United States, it's like you have to go on TV to see it. You have to, like, it's just something on the internet that people are talking. Obviously it's way, way, way more than that, but I'm just saying for a lot of Americans, like I don't know. It's like there's a disconnect there where maybe we make decisions about it without thinking about all of the consequences.
Iran's retaliation against the US-Israeli attack has seen British and European personnel come under fire in the Persian Gulf, and EU member Cyprus, with its British military bases, is at risk of attack from Iran and its proxies in the Middle East.
Okay, so this is like some of the closest EU countries to this whole conflict. But yeah, there's a lot of US military bases located in a lot of countries outside of the United States that are in this area being attacked, and by proxy, the people in those areas are being attacked.
With pressing challenges from Ukraine to trade to domestic politics, this is really not what Europe wanted or needed right now. So, in this video, we're going to explain why a war in Iran is terrible news for Europe.
Wow, so that's a bold statement. Like, This is not what Europe wanted or needed. I know there's obviously tons of debate going on right now over like the justification for doing all this, from the United States side of things. I mean, frankly, the reasons we have been given as like American citizens for why we're doing this are not totally compelling. Not, and it almost feels like a full plan hasn't been fully established or made clear. And yeah, like obviously there's things like, oh, you have to disarm Iran or make sure they don't have nuclear capabilities, nuclear bombs or missiles, and all the terrorist organizations, and the crimes against like people and human rights violations that are going. Yes, and I think most people will agree those are all horrible, very concerning things. But I don't know. From what I understand, I don't think the United States and Donald Trump, obviously, um, discussed any of this. I mean, say it how it is. Like literally days of bombing, like hellstorm, and back and forth missile attacks, and I don't think this whole military attack or this whole plan was discussed with like Donald Trump asked for permission or even talked about strategy or discussion with like European leaders. Or I don't think so, from what I understand, which is obviously this affects Europe so much. It's obviously very disrespectful that we didn't like talk to the EU or NATO or discuss things, and now it's just happening. It's just everyone has to deal with the consequences now.
The first reason this war is bad news for Europe is that there's a significant risk that European countries are dragged into it. The initial attack on Iran was obviously carried out by Israel and the United States, and the response of basically all European nations was to urge de-escalation and condemn Iran's retaliatory strikes across the region.
Okay, well, there you go. So immediately after we did this, Europe was saying, okay, stop. Like, we didn't discuss this. This isn't good, and it's putting European countries in danger, which is, I mean, sadly, it's hard to admit, but the truth is Donald Trump probably doesn't consider like the safety of European people when he makes decisions like this, which is obviously sickening and horrible, and it's a tragedy. It's beyond a tragedy, but that's the truth. And just given the nature of where this is in the Middle East, and it's just what I was saying at the beginning of the video, like it almost feels like the United States made a decision that may have more dire consequences for Europe or other surrounding countries than for us. Obviously, as of now, like four American military service members have died, like on different bases and stuff, which is a tragedy. But yeah, it's scary to think like what's going to happen in the future. Now, obviously, I think everybody can agree that nobody is a big fan of Iran, or a lot of the negative things that they do, or the threats that they have made, or dating back to the U.S. to like 1979, where they held Americans hostage and stuff. Like, so this dates back quite a bit for us, and yeah, it's troubling, obviously, and there's already like the war between Russia and Ukraine that's been going on, and now there's another thing.
It was only Spain's Pedro Sanchez that openly denounced the US-Israeli attack.
That's right. Spain openly said, don't, like, there are US military bases in Spain, and Spain said, you can't use them to attack Iran. We don't want any part of this. And Trump basically, like, as a response, is canceling Spain. Like, that's the response. Like, he's we're not going to do any trade with Spain or something crazy.
As well as Iran's actions. But by Monday, it looked virtually inevitable that at least some European nations would be drawn into the conflict. On Saturday, an Iranian attack on a military base in Bahrain narrowly missed British personnel, according to Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Oh my God.
On Sunday, France confirmed that Iranian drones had hit a French naval base in the UAE. And then later that night, a drone struck the UK's Akrotiri airbase in Cyprus.
Terrifying. Horrible. So Europeans are being put in danger. Like today, this isn't even totally up to date. Who knows what's happened in the meantime? And just thinking about modern warfare with like these missile systems and drones just flying around, tracking people, killing people, mindless killing machines, AI targeted, like it's terrifying.
A joint British-French-German statement on Sunday marked a change in tone, stating that we will take steps to defend our interests and those of our allies in the region, potentially through enabling necessary and proportionate defensive action to destroy Iran's capability to fire missiles and drones at their source. Separately, Keir Starmer said that British jets were in the air on defensive operations and had already successfully intercepted Iranian strikes, and added that the British government had granted permission for the US to use British bases for specific and limited defensive purpose.
Oh, wow. Well, that's great. Like, the UK is being such a fantastic ally, like, putting your military personnel in harm's way for something we've started. And obviously, we all can kind of rally around a common cause of, like, de-arming Iran, I guess, in a general sense. Or how exactly, like, yeah, the initial strike is happening, and it's huge, and it killed their leader and like 49 other Iranian leaders. And Trump has said that the goal is to allow the people of Iran to rise up and reclaim their government and put in place their own leaders, and that's like the dream. How exactly we're going to get from here to there hasn't been totally laid out. I think that's like one of the biggest criticisms, like the lack of a cohesive like plan, not a long-term plan, because ideally this isn't going to be long-term. I think Trump said he wants this to be like a 4-week military conflict, because he didn't even ask the US Congress for permission to start a war. There's so much. It's insane that this is like real life and happening. There's so many things.
Having previously denied a request to use British bases to bomb Iran. The obvious risk is that it puts European troops and personnel at risk, but it also creates challenges closer to home, as entering into the US and Israel's war of choice would likely spark domestic backlash. Trying to balance keeping on Trump's good side with domestic politics will not be easy, nor will maintaining a consistent position on international law.
Okay, it's a mess. Yeah, if from that point of view. Like for Trump, he does whatever he feels like, and feels like he can write the law, basically write the law or determine it. And for like the UK and other members of the EU, it's like, you guys are trying to go about this the right way. I know it's like a war and it's messy, but you're trying to do it like the right way.
Given European leaders' condemnation of Iran's retaliation, but not the initial US-Israeli attack. Europe's initial reluctance to involve itself already prompted anger from Trump-aligned figures in the US. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, for example, branded Europe pathetic on Iran. But more...
That's a pathetic thing to say. Unbelievable. Maybe it's not unbelievable, given like a lot of stuff that the Trump administration has said up until now, but maybe if we had like discussed this in detail with like all the members of NATO or the EU or all of our allies, people who are supposed to be our allies, we're supposed to trust them and give them information. If we had spent more time doing that and coming up with a plan that everyone was happy with, then maybe this wouldn't be like, of course the EU is going to be upset if you feel like you didn't have any say in what's going on and it really affects you.
More than this, it exposes just how insignificant a geopolitical actor the US considers the EU to be. Even the Italian government, meant to be one of Trump's closest EU allies, was not informed of the imminent attack on Iran.
That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. That is like a slap in the face. Why are we doing this? Why are we like this? Because of Trump. It's just so it literally is like putting out a message that the United States thinks we can do whatever we want whenever without asking or telling anybody about it. Eh,
Something that was made embarrassingly clear by the fact that the Italian defence minister was left stranded on holiday in Dubai due to the attacks. The eruption of
No
the war,
way.
therefore, seems to have caught the EU off balance. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's announcement on Saturday that she was calling an urgent Security College meeting for Monday was roundly mocked online as evidence of the EU's sluggish pace of action.
Of course there's a what this whole thing should have been a sluggish pace of action before the bombs fell. And of course we're supposed to be surprising Iran, like with the military strike. We're not supposed to be surprising our allies.
Additionally, the prospect of weeks, if not months, of fighting in and around Iran throws Cyprus's rotating presidency of the EU Council into doubt, as ministers and national leaders are unlikely to want to convene in Cyprus over the coming months, if Iranian drones and missiles could be inbound at any moment.
Right.
We don't yet know what will happen to Iran, but the worst case scenario is that the country falls into a protracted civil conflict that could have a huge humanitarian cost. From Europe's perspective,
Sure.
this would risk creating a new wave of refugees that may well seek safe haven in Europe.
Perfect example of a consequence of this conflict that the United States probably never thinks about. You know, Trump and our government is not thinking about, like, oh, what about all the human beings who, like in Iran, innocent people who are being affected, who might try to seek safety somewhere else. Where are they going to go? Well, they're by Europe. They're not by the United States, so we don't care or worry about that.
A logistical challenge that European governments will not be eager to face, and one which would inflame migration-related domestic politics. Another reason why the war is bad news for Europe is that it will probably mean diverting attention and resources away from Ukraine,
Yeah.
as Ukraine's European and Western partners will likely need to step up their military presence in the Middle East and bolster their regional allies like the Gulf states and Israel.
Trump campaigned on like president of no war, by the way. He wanted the Nobel Peace Prize, by the way. And now all this.
If Ukraine starts receiving less munition or critical intelligence, it could create an opening for Russia to exploit. On that
I hadn't even really thought of it that way. That's very true.
On that note, Europe's renewed focus on the Middle East doesn't bode well for the negotiations to end the war. Russia's strategy thus far has been to prolong peace talks without making concessions, and the West's new focus on Iran will likely allow Russia to continue delaying. Another reason why this war in Iran
Wow. Yeah, I really never thought about it from this point of view. Wow. That's bad.
is bad news for Europe is the sharp spike it's triggered in energy prices, as traffic has been effectively halted through the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point through which about 20% of global oil supply passes.
Oh.
On Sunday night, oil prices surged to the highest levels in more than a year. Brent crude, the international benchmark, jumped more than 16% to above $82 a barrel.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Talk about something else that the US definitely wasn't considering, how it would affect like energy prices in Europe. There's quite a few byproducts of this that I feel like we didn't consider at all that are going to have massive negative effects on Europe. Which I can only imagine must be infuriating, insanely frustrating.
Meanwhile, European gas prices jumped by as much as 28%, and given the risks to Qatari LNG, which the EU has recently become increasingly reliant on, this increase threatens to be the most serious shock to European gas markets since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, these energy spikes are concerning Europe for two main reasons. The first and most immediate concern is the economic impact. A sharp rise in oil and gas prices could trigger an inflation surge across European economies, which have already been battling inflation and low productivity.
Wow. I feel like no Americans know about that. Like this is not stuff we're talking about. Like I'm real glad to see this and understand it, but it's so frustrating to just to think about like a lot of this may have been avoidable if we just went about this in a different way, in like a more proper diplomatic way, perhaps. At least with our own allies, like perhaps like things were never going to work out, like between us and Iran. But I'm just talking about working with our allies on this.
If Iran were to formally close the Strait of Hormuz for a month, some estimates suggest European gas prices could more than double. This would be especially bad for Central and Eastern European economies
Oh my
due to their
God.
dependency on energy imports. According to a report by ING, Romania and Hungary could see a near 0.5 percentage
No
point increase
way.
in their inflation rate. The second reason why an energy spike would be bad news is that it would bolster Russia's finances just as it enters its fifth year of war in Ukraine.
Oh my. Putin must be laughing his ass off right about now. Like, and I got to admit, I had no idea this would have so many like benefits for Russia.
For context, in the last year, Russia has been struggling to reap in profits from its energy industry as a result of Western sanctions, Trump's tariff threats, and low global oil prices, which has seen its domestic oil companies struggling and its state budget facing serious depletion. However, this new oil price spike, which could reach $100 per barrel, will give Russia the fiscal boost it needs. What's more, in the face
Oh
of the
my
Strait of
God.
Hormuz disruption, major oil importers such as China and India will also have to look to Russia to provide even more crude supplies.
Oh my God. And it's like, yeah, this is complicated, but these are the kinds of things. If you're the president of the United States, that's a pretty important position. Like, you need to understand all of the geopolitical consequences of everything that you do. And just based on what I'm hearing, we really don't. We're really just like Trump's just sitting in his office like, yes, bomb, Iran, blow up, explosions, Iran, yes, nukes, bad, like, and not thinking about any of this.
Despite weaning themselves off Russian oil earlier last year, all of which will allow Russia to continue its war while aiming for its maximalist goals.
Wow.
As we mentioned earlier, the latest edition of
Oh, I think that's the end. Okay. Wow. I'm so glad I took a look at this, although it's very depressing and frustrating. Like I said, the European perspective is very valuable. It's very important, but something we just don't hear about or consider here in the United States. We're very much just focused on it's a very selfish point of view, to be honest. So I'm glad I took a look at this. I understand a lot of these things much better now. And I understand if there's Europeans who are not happy with the way that we're going about this. It makes so much sense now. So, yeah, it's not good. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on all this, especially if you're European and hearing your perspective, your opinion would be very valuable on something like this. So, and if you're interested in more videos like this, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.